Can you imagine a time where women were not able to vote? Just about a century ago, women's voices were not heard. Women haven't always had the same rights they have today. They were told what they could and could not do or say. For a long time, they believed that the only thing they were allowed to do was become a homemaker. The outside work was for the men, and the inside work was their job. A lot has changed in this short amount of time. For example, they haven't always been allowed to vote. The 1920 election was the first election which women were allowed to participate. In the 2008 election, 65.7% of voters were female. They didn't have this right until the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, which was ratified in 1919. All thanks to one woman, all of these things have become possible. This world-changing woman, Jeannette Rankin, helped to get women the rights they have today. She was the first woman elected to Congress in 1916. Jeannette Rankin was a suffragist, a congresswoman, a pacifist, a peace activist, and a reformer. Jeannette Rankin worked for women's suffrage, peace, and freedom. Rankin was a member of and was in charge of many different organizations. In 1917, she advocated the creation of a committee on women's suffrage. She was a professional lobbyist for the National American Suffrage Association. This association went all over speaking their mind about the matter of women's voting rights. Rankin's speaking and organizing efforts helped Montana gain the right to vote in 1914. Rankin joined the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom in 1919. This group of women worked to achieve through peaceful means world disarmament, full rights for women, racial and economic justice, an end to all forms of violence, and to establish those political, social, and psychological conditions which can assure peace, freedom, and justice for all. She became the leading lobbyist and speaker for the National Council for the Prevention of War from 1929 to 1939. This council was full of people who were against U.S. entry into the European War. Jeannette Rankin founded a scholarship for women in 1976. This scholarship provides much-needed aid to women with the same attributes. It is awarded to women aged 35 and older. It has awarded $1.8 million in scholarships to over 700 women. It has been helping mature, low-income women succeed through education since 1976. Regardless of race, creed, religion, color, ancestry, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, national origin, or disability. Jeannette Rankin was a part of several other things other than being a part of organizations. All of her duties took place in Montana, Georgia, and many other places in the United States. She served 2 terms in the House of Representatives. First term was from 1917 to 1919, and the second term was from 1941 to 1942. After being elected into Congress, she divided her time between pacifism and social welfare. She was the first woman elected to a national legislature in any Western democracy. She voted against the United States entry into World War I. She did not hide her feelings about the U.S. participation in the European War. She opened a congressional debate on the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, which later, in 1919, became the 19th Amendment of the Constitution. Due to the ratification of the 19th Amendment, women now have all the same rights as men. They are allowed to vote, fight in the war, and they have all the same freedom and peace that men have. Jeannette Rankin had a big part in making this all happen. She spoke out about women's rights and their peace and freedom. She led many protests, like the 1913 suffrage march from the U.S. Capitol to the White House in Washington, D.C. This march brought the issue of women's rights and freedom to the public eye. Rankin was a pioneer, struggling for many decades to secure women's rights, overcoming the jeers and unfair treatment of many around her.